Hello and welcome one and all, and welcome back. I know it's been a minute. That cough is the reason why I've actually been a little sick. The wind blew the wrong way, and then my scientists decided to go, you know what? Murder. Let's kill him. So I have been on and off very sick because my science is going nuts because the wind and I guess a hurricane and some other shit. So I'm behind on Revice episodes and generally most things. So this is going to be a twofer. I honestly debated if I should wait until the end of next week so that I could have episode 4 on there too. But this is going to be long enough as this because I have words for these two episodes. Good words, mind you, but still words. And this intro has gone on for almost a minute, so I think it is time to settle up and talk about the episode. Starting with, obviously, episode 2. Oh, and by the by, if you just want to skip to certain parts or you don't want to hear the episode recap parts, I'm going to put links, the timestamps below, and all that kind of stuff, so you can just skip around to every part you want. If you just want to avoid the episode recap parts and just go straight into the episode discussion parts, where I'm going to talk about both episodes, then it's below. It's going to be below if you just want to skip it. Okay, now on to the episode. So anyway, remembering last week's episode, the first episode, Ikki decided not to become the Kamen Rider Revice because he has to, protect the family bathhouse, or basically has decided to mainly focus on only protecting the family bathhouse. But Phoenix decides that he's the only one who can use the Revice driver. Because he's the only one who can use the Revice driver, and so they send his brother Daiji to basically convince him to, join Phoenix in a sense and basically work as Kamen Rider Revice. Meanwhile, we have the dead man, or at least a dead man, going to a golf course, or more accurately, a shooting range on the golf course. Where a caddy and his golfer have an argument, and basically the golfer is kind of a self-important prick a little bit, and tells his caddy off and fires him. And so the caddy gets approached by the dead men, who go up to him and give him the bata, or mantis, vice stamp, to give him a mantis demon so that he can convince his golfer to listen to him in order for him to either save his job or just, get his partner to listen to him more. So the brothers are, and so meanwhile we cut back to the bathhouse, and Ikki really doesn't care about the whole Revice thing. He says he has to protect the family bathhouse, but then Dad comes busting out and telling them about a dead man showing up at the golf course, the nearby golf course, so it's pretty close by. And so they head off, and Ikki transforms the Kamen Rider Revice yet again, Revi and Vice, and in this fight they also use the Eagle stamp and accidentally use the remix form for the first time, which is pretty funny because it's Vice basically futzing about because he wants to cause chaos and have fun. Because he's a demon, and Ikki's trying his best to keep him under control, and so while they do that, he accidentally flips the switch and uses the remix function. And so they used remix, and they beat the Bata, or the Mantis, but then it looks like Vice is going off, because in the middle of this fight, he also has a moment where he tries to attack Daiji, maybe to eat him, because he just wants to eat people, which is kind of a hilarious character thing. It's kind of hilarious considering the fact that the main people he seems to be targeting for eating are Ikki's family, which is kind of hilarious if Vice is some part of Ikki's subconscious that maybe resents his family in a way or something. Probably not, though. He's probably his own person, just really wants to eat these people. But he also goes up to the golfer and tells him to unleash his demons, which in a way lets the golfer encounter the dead men so that we can have a second fight later in the episode where the golfer goes to Deadman and gets the Megalodon Vice stamp to use the Megalodon. demon, Megalodon Deadman. Meanwhile, Icky is dealing with Vice because Vice is a little too out of control. Because, as I stated earlier, he tried to eat his brother in the middle of the fight earlier in the episode, and he made a comment about Icky's mother being delicious, which that could be taken in a completely different way. But yeah, Vice is still kind of uncontrollable to Icky, and so he's like, I don't want to be Revice because I can't really control this thing, and I have to defend my family. But when another Deadman shows up, he rushes into battle and does it unmorph, for lack of a better term, and goes in and almost gets his ass kicked by the various Deadman minions. What are their minions called? Yeah, I'm looking that up. The GIF Jr. So there's kids. Yeah, the GIF Jr., which makes me think GIF will look a little like an advanced version of his own mooks, which is kind of cool. Anyway, so Icky almost gets his ass kicked, or does get his ass kicked by the GIF Jr. before Vice agrees to do whatever Icky says so that he'll transform again and not die. Because if you remember from the first episode, Vice mentions that if Icky dies, he dies. So, keeping Icky alive is very pivotal to Vice's very existence. So, they use the T-Rex remix this time. So, they do butt to face, and they even make a joke about the butt to face thing. And, they make a joke about the butt to face thing. And, they actually do a rider kick in the T-Rex form and beat the Megalodon. And surprisingly, he still doesn't have the Megalodon form, despite that being a form that was highly advertised. So I kind of love this really weird Reiwa trend, where it's like the highly advertised form, that's like one of the early releases, is basically barely in the show. Like we saw it with Saber in the Jacobin stocks and Peter Fantasista, which he barely used. Because those are mostly given away to the other riders, and we saw it with Falcon for 01 because that shit got stolen by Jin early on. So it makes me wonder if he's going to lose Megalodon to a secondary rider, because apparently we're supposed to have 5 of those, or if he's just not going to use the form as much, or just get it really late in comparison to everything else. But that's enough about episode 2 thoughts. Let's move on to episode 3. Anyway, episode 3. Episode 3 starts off in a kind of funny way. It starts off with Daiji. This is very much his episode as well as Icky's episode. It starts off with Daiji basically lamenting the fact that he's still trying to get Icky to sign the contract because Icky doesn't sign the contract despite resolving to be Revice alongside Vice. Anyway, Icky is currently dealing with some land developers who want to come by and buy the family bathhouse in order to bulldoze it and renovate it to be a shopping mall kind of deal. But anyway, the regulars of the bathhouse rush in to deal with, to basically stop them because they don't want them to tear down the bathhouse. And then Icky's dad decides to get involved because he has to defend the home, or it's his time to give them a lashing. And before, he was just doing what I assume was a YouTube challenge. I'm not 100% sure what he was doing. It was this kind of background shtick. But anyway, he decides to get involved. At least to a kind of funny joke after we cut away. And we cut to the sister, Sakura, who's going out shopping with her friend, Ayaka. And they are being dropped off by Ayaka's mom, and that becomes important because Ayaka's mom is basically a stage mom to Ayaka's little sister, who's, I'm assuming, a young idol or something, because she's off to get a fashion shoot, and next week we'll see that she's in a concert or something. Anyway, when we cut back to Icky, when the dead man shows up, because obviously a dead man's going to show up, alongside a guy with a gun, Icky's dad is being held back by the show's regulars, who are because he's trying to sign the contract or put his stamp on the contract, because For those of you who don't know, in Japan you have these kind of personalized official stamps that you can use on documents instead of writing your signature as you do in America. It's kind of neat because they're all personalized to the individual because they're official seals. So Iki's dad is using his seal and about to stamp down the contract to sell the bathhouse, despite the fact that you live there, buddy. I wonder what they told him. But anyway, all the regulars are holding him back from doing that, and I imagine his wife will very much not be happy if he signs that contract. But Iki has to rush off and deal with the dead man situation. So here's an interesting note. Iki is not carrying the Revice driver himself, which feels really weird because he was carrying it after Daiji dropped it off last week, but I'm just going to assume it needs to go back to Phoenix for someone to do maintenance or something. So that's why he doesn't have it, or he just gives it to Daiji later on again. So when Iki gets there, because Daiji's already there with the Phoenix unit fighting the dead men, he runs into Sakura and her friend, and because he can't transform because he doesn't have his belt, he just tries his best unmorph to help people. And there's a bit of a short moment that was in the trailer for the episode. Everyone kind of freaked out over because Iki's going yo to Ayaka, but since he might have a thing for her, which is kind of hilarious. I think this is the first time in a long while we've had a main writer show any interest in a member of the opposite sex. Outside of it being a joke or something, in this case it's kind of a joke, but it's a little telling of Iki as a character, which is kind of cool. Just that quick yo. It reminds me of the Miles Morales moment at Spider-Verse, the movie Spider-Verse, not the comic Spider-Verse. Anyway, Iki and a dude rolls up with a gun, kidnaps Ayaka, and then also takes Sakura. I don't know why he wanted Sakura, but he has Sakura too, and he is using the chaos to kidnap the girls and is working with the dead men in this case. And Iki and then Daiji runs across Iki and gives him the driver. They fight, he fights, and then he also fights the mammoth dead man because no, it's the Kong dead man, not the mammoth dead man. He just gets the mammoth stamp in this episode. So he fights the Kong dead man, but the thing's too damn strong for him to really do any major damage against. And so when they track down the kidnapper and he tells Daiji what's happened, he transforms into the eagle or double form and tries to destroy the Kong dead man, but then Julio of the dead men shows up, and this is our first general confrontation, and we're on episode 3. So Julio's probably going to be the first one to die of the 3 generals for the dead men group. Anyway, Julio tells him to hand over all of his Vice stamps, and so Daiji runs off to procure more Vice stamps. Well, Iki remains behind and honestly considers giving away his Vice stamps to protect at least Sakura. Sakura's friend is a nice bonus, but he's mainly doing it to protect his family. Meanwhile, with the kidnapper, because Ayaka's family is apparently rich, he wants them to pay a ransom, so he has Ayaka do the whole call your mom thing. But, she's in the middle of a photo shoot for her youngest and doesn't answer the phone, just sends her a text hey, middle of a photo shoot, call back later. Ayaka said, Mom, I've been kidnapped, but she just does it because she's dejected at the phone. And the kidnapper just kind of laughs about it, said, damn, your mom's cold. So, Daiji goes to the Phoenix headquarters, and 2 new Vice stamps are ready for him. The Mammoth Vice stamp and the Petrosaur or Petrodon Vice stamps. I don't remember that's exactly what it's called, but it's the Petrodon. I know dinosaurs, although technically that's not a dinosaur. Anyway, so he goes back and he gives the Petrodon Vice stamp to Julio, who smacks him across the face, but gives the Mammoth Vice stamp to Iki. And then Iki uses it to transform into the Dino/Mammoth form, and then beats the bad guys, and beats Julio, and destroys the Kong dead man, and saves his sister. It's really hard to comment on fights, so I'm just saying that looked really cool. Interesting note that the Dino form uses giant boomerangs, and I've been rewatching Avatar, so looking at this, I just keep referring to it as Sokka as a Kamen Rider. Anyway, so they beat the dead man and arrest the guy, and the guy says he wasn't the one in charge. He wasn't the, I guess, owner of the Kong Vice stamp. He was literally hired on help for this whole scheme, and someone else is the sacrifice that the dead men are using for this whole endeavor. And the episode hints that it might be Ayaka, but because we don't see the face, it could be Ayaka, or it could also be the younger sister. It could be either or. All we know is it's a woman, and they have a grudge against the mother of the pair. So that'll be obviously revealed next week, and that ends the episode. Alright, so how were these two episodes? Honestly, Revice, continuing from the hype of episode 1, off to a really great start still. Episode 2 was a pretty good one to deal with the whole Icky Vice situation, considering the fact that they have to work together. Vice is kind of like, or at least he's framed to be kind of like, a more hyperactive version of how Ankh was back in O's. Like, yeah, he's an ally, but he's not really someone that you can really trust, at least in terms of, he'll always have his own motives and continually trying to eat people from the looks of it. Like, again, he's not really someone that he could trust at the moment, and he needs that trust that he can at least control Vice before he can fully agree to being Revice. And so, now that he has Vice's word, for however much he can trust that he'll be a good boy, so that they can fight the dead men. It does show, that they'll be able to work together and continue to be the Kamen Riders for this series. I do like the fact that there was also an issue of trust with the golfer and his caddy, who were the main victims of the week. And that was a pretty cool way to add in the whole theme of trust throughout the whole episode. And episode 3 was also a pretty good continuation. It again continues the theme of Icky's family being possibly the most important thing to him. And the idea that the dead men are a bit more crafty than standard Toku, than your standard fare. Like, yeah, they'll unleash a monster and use a person as a patsy, but they'll also hire a patsy to be the cover for their patsy in order for a long-winded scheme. I still don't 100% know what their endgame goal is outside of gathering a sacrifice, which is pretty nebulous at the moment. So it could basically mean anything like, oh, we'll sacrifice your emotions or something like that. But it does have to cause havoc to recharge Gifu, and then they can get their endgame condition, which is pretty cool. I do like the fact that they are already bringing out some cunning plans to get over on the Kamen Rider, and they also already know how to get to him. Even if maybe targeting Sakura was a happy coincidence, they already know that this dude's family is his main weakness. So Sakura, she's good at defending herself. We've seen her take on like the GIF Juniors before, which is pretty cool. It'd be pretty cool if she gets to become a Kamen Rider, and then we don't have to worry about that. Again, the current rumor is that there's supposed to be 5 Kamen Riders for the series, and they're 5 members of the Igarashi family, so it just kind of fits. Although I honestly have a feeling I doubt the mother and father will be Kamen Riders. So I just imagine the main trio of siblings might be, and maybe not the actual parents. Speaking of the family, I think the family continues to be a very strong aspect of the show, considering the fact that right now they're Icky's main reason for fighting, to protect his family. We have to have a good amount of care for said characters, and the show's actually doing a pretty good job of it. Daiji's obviously been given the lion's share of the focus because, he is the Phoenix contact as he works with Phoenix, and he's the one that can give Icky the driver to transform. And, any extra power-ups. But they're already getting into him having his own little character arc with doubting himself because, he was originally intended to be Revice, but I keep saying Revice, but he was originally intended to use the driver, but he choked, and they even bring it up in episode 3 when he grabs what I'm assuming is the driver for the next Kamen Rider for the series. Although I don't know 100% how that driver would work, especially unless it has its own gimmick. I don't know how it would work with the current gimmick of the Vice stamps, unless it has its own gimmick. But it looks very different. Like, it's interesting. It may be a prototype or just a placeholder for what the next driver would be. But I'm interested to see if that is actually a driver or not. Or if it's just like a prototype or something. But we do see that Daiji does want to take it. But funny enough, George is the one who berates him for basically like, oh, you didn't even have the courage to transform into Revice. So what makes you think you use this one? So this one might be stronger than standard Revice. We don't know yet because we don't know a lot about this driver. It's honestly pretty interesting to have it be hinted at so early on in the series instead of typically it'll just happen, but here's being hinted at. So we'll probably get the secondary rider within the next few episodes, maybe towards the Christmas episode, like the December bent. Especially because we haven't seen it in any scans yet, so it might be in like the Q2 toy sales. Here we are talking about toy sales, but the toy sales tell us about the cool shit, and we haven't seen any stuff from these monthly scans. Although still early series, so interesting. It's just all leading up to stuff. So yeah, I do like that Daiji's getting this pretty obvious but still pretty cool focus, and I am liking Ikki as a main character. Like, again, he's pretty basic right now because we haven't really explored him 100% much outside of him trusting if he can be Revice because he can't really control Vice. And speaking of Vice, a lot of people are already sick of Vice's shtick because he has a very thick, very strong shtick that he does. He's basically like a more unhinged version of the Taros from Dino. And yeah, he's basically acting like the flounderized Taro right now. And I would like a bit more subtle moments with the character instead of this kind of balls to the wall craziness that he's kind of has so far. Like, I wonder if we're going to give Vice a character arc or something related to his origins, maybe, or if he's just gonna still be acting like the flounderized Imogene and Dino. It's funny enough because he gets a Dino form in episode 3. Now, speaking of characters or demons, the dead men are seeming a bit more interesting than they were on the surface because, as it turns out, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Argulera, she hasn't officially met GIF, so she brings into question whether or not who she is or some other stuff, and that basically is curious as to what their origins are if they weren't directly created for or by GIF, or how they know what they're supposed to do. It very much is curious as to what their origins are. It makes me curious as to what their origins are as the villains of the series. And Phoenix, obviously they continue to seem like they might be shady, but they haven't done anything outwardly shady, so can't really comment much on them. They just want to get their best weapon to fight the dead men, which is right now Revice, the Revice system, and Ikki's the only one that they know that can use the Revice system. So yeah, although the intro of the series does show that they might be up to some shady shit in the background if you do watch the intro music video. And yeah, as I stated, Revice is off to a really good start. I like this, that they've already dealt with the whole getting Ikki to trust Vice thing early on. They're working to make the Deadman an interesting antagonist, and we've started Daiji's Angst Boy arc by episode 3. And from episode 4, it looks like they might wrap up the bulk of the Angst arc in episode 4, but it's good to get this out of the way as soon as possible. I guess I say this about Angst arcs all the time. after the initial trigger has been shown. Like, just get it out of the way so we can focus on some more interesting character dynamics instead of one character being resentful of the other character for like 10 or so episodes, because we don't have that much time to waste, people. Like, I'm happy that they're getting this stuff out of the way with Daiji quickly instead of it letting it simmer on the back burner for like half the season or something. And like, I'm focusing a lot on Daiji because the series, at least so far, is focusing a lot on Daiji. And yeah, Daiji's a pretty good secondary character. He reminds me a lot of the second birth. I forget his name. The second birth in O's. I'm bringing a lot of O's parallels to Revice as a whole. Like, I can't help it. There are a lot of O's parallels to this show. We have a nebulously, potentially evil organization with Phoenix, who may or may not have ties to the main villains. Main villains that might be more interesting than they let on originally. A main character who has to work with what would easily be one of the main villains if given the chance to. And a rather tumultuous relationship, although Ankh blows Vice out of the water in terms of character, if you ask me personally. And we have a lot of themes of family and working together, all that kind of stuff, which is basically in the Kamen Rider and Toku a lot of time, but it's more prominent. And we have an angsty side boy, because we have an angsty side boy in O's, and we have an angsty side boy in Revice as well. So yeah, there are a lot of O's parallels in Revice, and I kind of wonder if some O's writing staff managed to work their way over into Revice, unlike the Ghost writing staff working their way over into Saber. And with that said, I look forward to next week's episode, which I hope to have out on time and less nasally. So until then, everybody,